Hi, this is Eva for Once Upon a Timeline. Welcome to Midnight Mandela. How are you this week? It's been another really fast week. Probably say that every week. So now it's also a deja vu week. But I hope you guys are all doing well. Jackie's in, Vivian, Shari. I don't think I saw you last week, Shari. Kind of quiet. Lord Frybread, I think I saw. Yes. Monty. For some reason, my eyeballs are not looking at the gray names. Okay, so, it's been kind of a hectic week, what with the assassination drama and stuff last week. There's just been, like, even if you're not really into the emotional side of the Kirk assassination, it's just been a crazy amount of drama as far as all the things that don't really make sense about what information was released, and then first it's this, then it's this, no, it's this, and every time I look into something, it doesn't really make much sense, and the video doesn't make sense. Like, why did they not release the full up-close video when they released the video for all the far-away stuff? And, like, how did he get off the roof with a full gun? And then they said, I mean, he didn't really have time to dismantle it, but even if he did, then how come it was fully reassembled when he left it in the woods? Wouldn't you just leave it disassembled in the woods? I mean, there's just like so many things. There's so many things. So it's just been crazy. And I think you just, at some point, you kind of have to accept that it's impossible that it's this stupid. Like, even if you were coming up with some kind of a secret evil plot, you couldn't be this bad at it, and then there's tons of evidence that he was shot from behind. I mean, you can literally see the bullet fly and hit his head. If you look at some of the video, you can see a white thing that hits, and then right then his head flicks. There's like, I mean, what are the odds that the bullet would show up on video? I mean, when has that ever happened? There's just so much bizarreness to the whole thing that it just can't be coincidence. It can't. It was, yeah, I mean, I think it is rage bait, but I don't think even like any human could have organized the rage bait that well. Like, I think it just has to be like a timeline thing or something that, not only do you have the left versus right, and then now you've got the whole thing that maybe Netanyahu was behind it. So it's the right versus the left versus the Israelis. But I mean, just the fact that so much weird stuff showed up on video, I just can't. I think only the universe could have organized anything that bizarre, frankly. I mean, in some ways it totally doesn't, and I think you don't want to get sucked in. But in a way it does, because I think it's... So the name of the organization run by Kirk was The Turning Point. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it might be another little turning point. I'm starting to think that all of the words that make themselves into prominent use do mark a aspect of the current reality. So, like, when we went through the lockdowns, and then they said social distancing. Now, of course, at the time, they meant for that to be temporary and 8 feet and like that. But it did kind of mark what seemed to be a rather permanent change, or at least long-term change in society. And I would blame it all on the lockdowns, but I had seen that coming before. Like, there was just this weird tendency, even in people who used to like social activity, that they pulled back. Now, not that everybody suddenly became antisocial, but I definitely noticed just people became less social. And even before that happened, but when that social distancing kicked in, it stuck. There was a little spring back afterwards, but since then, you just don't see, like, if you go to the clubs and the meetings, there's just not the same interest in it. A lot of clubs have just closed because nobody wants to do it. So something does seem to be, I don't know, we seem to be shifting over into the Israeli government did it kind of a narrative. And there's a bunch of evidence for it. I still think they're all narratives, so I don't think you should get too sucked into it, but it does seem like there's something that shifted. And then another thing that's shifted a little is I kind of feel like the left versus right narrative actually toned down a little bit. More people, not everybody, certainly some people went the other way, but more people on the left kind of felt bad. I'm not going to say it's everybody, certainly, but and the people screaming for more murders kind of alienated the other parts of the left that are like, wait a minute, let's not scream for more murders. And then the right has kind of shifted away from, like, it's interesting because you would have expected the right to go, see, it's those trans people. And instead what we're seeing is that a lot of the rank and file are looking at the Israeli government. And they're like, oh, those trans thing, that's just a red herring. So that actually shifts some of the anger away from that too. So it'll be interesting to see how that spin. Maybe we're tired of fighting left versus right, so let's blame it on Israel. You know, I don't know. Netanyahu is making it easy by just acting like a total, like, he acts so guilty all the time. It's really hard not to think that he's guilty. But so anyway, yeah, like I said, if you look at this as like movie narratives, I think it's just easier to deal with. I really do. Don't get sucked in, but I'm hoping that maybe we can learn to get along a little better, and maybe just blaming everything on the Israeli government, not saying the people, because they will be as clueless as anybody, but maybe that'll help us get along a little better. We were all brainwashed to trust the media and anyone in authority. Yeah. But you know what's interesting is, like, when I grew up in the 70s, it just wasn't like it is now at all. First of all, and I grew up in California in the Bay Area, so if anything, that should have been the mecca of wokeism and stuff. But that stuff just wasn't there in the 70s. And there wasn't much political talk in the 70s. You didn't get a lot of finger wagging. It's like, well, you know, like, you look at history and it's like, okay, some good stuff happened, some bad stuff happened, but there wasn't like endless finger wagging. Like, it's just like, okay, well, that was wrong, we shouldn't have done it, let's not do it again, okay, move on. We really didn't talk about left versus right at all. I don't really recall anything like that. I think people agreed on, you know, murder and meanness is bad, and there wasn't really any conflict that way. So then later when they're saying, oh, the schools are brainwashing everybody, I was not like on board with that at first, because I hadn't experienced it. I had not seen how it changed, you know, that now they're teaching a certain ideology versus another one and like that. And so a lot has changed. Of course, I'm not saying that only one side is hypocritical, because certainly there's plenty of it to go around, and even outside of politics there's plenty. I think it just might be that, you know, the energies are so high that it's like either sink or swim. Now stuff comes up so much stronger, you either learn to deal with it, or you just, you know, get more and more ridiculous. And as things get more extreme, you know, like, I kind of feel like the left is kind of experiencing that now, because you got some people calling for let's murder more of them, and then some other people are like, wait a minute here. Because, you know, it's one kind of thing to just kind of joke about it. Yeah, like, get rid of those people. But when it really comes down to actually murdering somebody, like, you know, you're not joking. You're serious now. You know, like, some people are like, wait. I may have joked about that, but I wasn't serious. You're being serious. And they're now kind of going, well, we got to draw a line, you know, and other people are running over the top of the line. So it was in a way, I feel like that's a turning point. Like, there's a split there on the left about which way you're going to go. Are you going to pull back and say, wait, we have to draw a line? Or are you going to just jump over and say you don't care. So I think especially for the left, that's the case. But for the right now, there's this point where they're like, are we just going to blame the trans people for everything? Or are we going to accept that there's some other issues potentially going on? So that's been interesting too. And then the right has traditionally been blind, kind of blind, supporters of Israel. So that is a turning point for them to second guess some of that. So I'm hoping that people will start to question some of their blind beliefs and maybe take a more moderate position. That would be nice. At least some people. The narrative, the way it's spinning, that is making it possible for both sides. So I'm hoping. So since the 3-eye atlas is coming from the same direction as the WOW signal did, we send the 3 atlas to us from the Sagittarius arm where we used to be. I don't know. In this timeline, the WOW signal was never solved. See, in my timeline, it was. They said it was. It turned out to be the remnants of the Big Bang, like the residual sound from the Big Bang. I think there still is that residual sound from the Big Bang, but now it was not the cause of the WOW signal last I checked. I'm assuming that's still the case. You never can tell if you haven't checked lately, because sometimes it flips back or it flips to some third thing. You don't see me? There will be... Okay. I'm only seeing the thumbnail. I don't know. I'm like, everything looks normal. Are the rest of you guys seeing me normally? Maybe just, like, go up to the URL and refresh it and see if that straightens it out. Maybe some of the... There's been a couple people said things looked weird, so I don't know. But it's not... Each one of you is saying something else. Check this weird thing out. Shoddy. Let's see. The man who refused to die and came back from his death 6 times. Accusations of witchcraft. Each time he was declared medically dead, came back alive and breathing. See, first time pronounced dead after a workplace accident. I would really like to hear more detail on this. They took me to the morgue. I woke up feeling cold. The morgue wasn't closed, and I walked out. My family thought I was a ghost. I don't know what it is about some of these third world countries, but they really grow up believing like ghosts look like people. I feel like in my reality growing up, I grew up believing ghosts look like ethereal and stuff. So if you saw one, you wouldn't think it was a person. But I've definitely had it where, like, my Filipino relative, one time I was wearing some weird clothes and I was up super early in the morning because I was trying something on for some event later. And I was wearing a dress, which I never wear, and he thought I was a ghost, and he ran away. But I'm solid, just because I'm wearing some weird stuff and I woke up early doesn't mean I'm a ghost, but, so that always interests me, because I never think anybody's a ghost if they look like a person. I would expect them to look, ghostly. Later, after, I think that might really help with, like, not getting scared, though, because after a battle with malaria and another death declaration, Azizi once again revived as his family prepared to place him in a coffin. After a car crash, a snake bite, a fall into a toilet pit, and even being burned in his own home by fearful neighbors, Azizi was declared dead and again and again. So it's getting blamed on dark magic. Huh. I think he's going to have to travel to another place where they don't know him if they're going to act all freaked out by him. Huh, that's interesting. So we definitely have like a lot of storyline lately of like the cells in your body being able to be still alive like a half hour later and stuff like that. So I think it's becoming much more doable for some of this stuff to happen. So it could be that maybe his body goes into shock and his heart slows way down, or he goes into some kind of suspended animation thing and then pops back out, and maybe he has a tendency in that direction. So some of these things I'm a little suspicious, like maybe they weren't really enough to kill him, but he went into some kind of weird shock and then they're like, oh, he's dead. Because if you had a car crash enough to kill you, then when you came back to life, you should still have major injury, right? I mean, like, you shouldn't, I don't know, it seems a little weird. But if maybe you hit your head really hard and you went into like a temporary coma or something, I could see you coming back from that. It'll be interesting to see if we get to hear more on this, because I just feel like there should be more details. Like, when he had the car crash, was he like totally torn up and mangled and then he somehow healed and walked out of the morgue, or did they just see that his heart was stopped, so they said, oh, he's dead? Maybe he has a tendency to fall into a coma or something when he's in when he goes into shock. I feel like I'm still like if you ever watch the X-Files, the Scully and Mulder, I'm still like the Scully, even though I've seen so much crap, that I should be turning into Mulder. I still have a tendency to go, well, there's a possible logical explanation. The forgotten 1930s tech that delivered newspapers via radio. I think we had this one on before. The fax paper, almost entirely forgotten. Sure, almost entirely forgotten. How about 100% forgotten? Because we never remembered it. When we think of the evolution of mass media, it usually goes first newspaper, then radio, then TV, then the web. But that's not how technology actually progresses. It usually progresses in fits and starts, such as the case with fax papers. People of the 30s started to think of the newspaper as an old-fashioned news delivery device. Despite the Great Depression, the radio was one of the few new technologies to achieve mainstream success. 24 newspapers in the United States went so far as to buy their own radio stations to make this happen. So I guess they would fax the newspaper. Yeah, this has been on, but it seems like it's upgraded, because I don't remember 24 newspapers doing it. And the story was sort of like, well, there wasn't very many people sending information, so that was why it wasn't popular. And a fax paper, there was no way that faxes were around like when I was a kid. It was like a big deal when they invented faxes. Everybody's like, if you remember the times, it's like when something new came around and you were all that in a bag of chips if you knew the technology. It was like, oh, I'm going to fax it. I'm going to fax it. People just were like showing off with their ability, subtly, but, people still do it now. Look, I have the new iPhone or whatever, but the fax papers receivers were expensive. You could pick one up at Macy's in the late 1930s for $100, about $1,600 adjusted for inflation. That's not bad at all. It really isn't, considering everything. Like I think today, a cell phone costs $1,000. And the fax paper, the whole family could use it. The first computer system I bought in like the late 90s was $4,000. So it was a lot more than this fax paper system. And that was like for a pretty good one. And it was just the computer, the keyboard, the screen, and a printer. And it was like near wholesale, because I had a friend that worked in the industry who had pity on my poor self. And I had gotten this tiny little inheritance, so I used that to buy it, or I would have never been able to afford it. I was actually extremely grateful when, 10 or 15 years later, you could get a replacement system for like $300. It was like, when that system finally conked out, I was like, oh, I don't have $4,000, and it wasn't nearly that much anymore. Plus, I still had the monitor and the keyboard, so I really just needed the main computer part. Yeah, I don't buy it. I've definitely had this on before though, but this fax radio thing was on like 6 or 8 months ago or something. We used to use fax machines so much in the 90s. Yeah, everybody thought they were all that because you could run that through the phone lines, My weirdest mantra is wealth is not contagious, but stupidity is. If you look at research, though, wealth is contagious. They say that if you hang out with wealthy people with kind of that entrepreneurial business mindset, the chances of you taking on some of that mindset and going more in that direction and having a higher income are considerable. In fact, they say that if you want to improve your income, you should hang out with wealthy people, because you'll take on the mindset. I've really started to believe that is the main thing, is mindset on a lot of this stuff. There's a certain mindset, and I think that's why when you grow up poor, it's really hard to get out of being poor, because you have a mindset of thinking a certain way, and it's the poor way because you grew up poor, and it's the same mindset that your parents had who were poor, Not to say that it'll always stick and or that rich people mindset will always pass down to kids, but okay, we already did that one. But there's been research on that for quite some time showing that. And that mindset also determines future wealth. Like, say if everybody's in college about the same income, and then they take research on mindset, and so like the strongest determiner of future income and success was your mindset. It wasn't IQ. It wasn't IQ, which is very interesting. Guys, for me, governor of Texas was not on wheelchair, never saw him use. Now the story is that he can't. Wait a minute. That guy again. So for me, like, a couple of years ago, I never heard of him being in a wheelchair ever. And then they said he was like, couldn't move his legs and blah, blah, blah. And that was the thing. And I was like, wait, is that a Mandela? I'm like, well, maybe I just didn't know. I wasn't sure. But I really was suspicious about that. Okay. So now there's this. Okay. Caught moving his legs. Wait, wait, hold on a second. Okay, the thing is we have to see, is it like AI or... Okay, so that's him, right? Okay, he moved his legs though, right? So this one's a tough one because, I mean, some people can move their legs to some extent, but they can't actually, like, walk. So I don't know if I really ever really studied that, he couldn't move it at all. This is interesting, though, because I've never seen him move his legs anytime in front of the camera. I think we're going to have to keep an eye on this one. I wonder what the official word from the universe is. Let's see. Greg Abbott can move his legs partially. Let's see what the official word is. So for me, this has been a suspiciously maybe Mandela. Spinal cord injury when a falling oak tree struck him when he was jogging. What is the odds of that? A falling oak tree struck him when he was jogging. All right. Abbott has consistently described himself as paralyzed from the waist down. While there are allegations that he exaggerates his disability for political or financial gain. Others caution against ableist assumptions. All right, he got a financial benefits from a settlement. A settlement? What? Like, who did he sue? He sued somebody about an oak tree? He claims he's paralyzed from the waist down. So I feel like if you said that, then you shouldn't be able to move your legs, though. Oak tree. Never really looked into this. Who do you sue if an oak tree gets you? 8.9 million lawsuit where a falling oak tree paralyzed him. The settlement was reached with the tree's owner and the tree trimming company. He has tax-free annually adjusted payments for life and periodic lump sum payments. Abbott, who was a 26-year-old law student at the time of the incident, has used the settlement to cover lifelong medical expenses and mobility needs. That is interesting. I would not be shocked if the timeline decided to disclose that maybe that story was not 100% accurate. Abbott sued the homeowner and the tree trimming company, arguing they were negligent. I would assume, hopefully, that was reached with the insurance company of the landowner. I still feel like that kind of a settlement for a tree falling over is humongous. I don't know if that would happen in many other countries, because I mean, like, it'd be one thing if somebody ran him over with their truck while they were, like, drinking or something, but a tree falling over. Abbott has been a vocal advocate for tort reform, supporting laws that limit damages in civil lawsuits, a stance that critics have labeled hypocritical given his own multi-million-dollar settlement. He has maintained that the reforms target frivolous lawsuits, and then someone injured today under similar circumstances could still pursue a claim. That is interesting. Could you really in 84 get that much money from a tree? 8.9 million. I feel like maybe that would amount I would see now, but I don't remember in 84 people being so lawsuit happy and the courts being so friendly towards that. Actors are lying. Well, I agree, I don't trust any politicians. I don't know Abbott, but he is a politician, so I kind of automatically don't really trust him, not because he's a Republican or a Democrat, but because he is a politician. So, Monty, wealth can be contagious, but it's not always 100% contagious. You can hang out with people with a flu, doesn't mean you're going to get a flu. Flu's still contagious. It's not 100%. If it was 100%, then I'm telling you, everybody would glue on to every rich person. Guys, for me, Governor of Texas was not on wheelchair. Never saw him using one. Yeah, see, Shari, that's the thing. So I think it was maybe a year or two ago where I was like, is that a Mandela? I don't know. It just one I wasn't really 100% on. I was, maybe I'm, I don't live in Texas. I mean, if I suddenly found out that our governor has always been in a wheelchair, then I'd be a lot more confident that, like, no, he wasn't. But successful people are assholes. So I think that you should probably realize that a lot of people become assholes when they get money. They were still assholes before that. They just weren't showing it. Power brings out things in people. Now, not all of them, certainly, but I refuse to stoop that low to get my. I know people who didn't stoop low at all. They just worked hard and they made some good choices and they invested in some stuff. And then a lot of people I know just tried different things, so they might have failed 3 or 4 times until they finally found like the winning product or the winning service or the winning recipe where they could make money. And they paid their people decently and they weren't low at all. So I would not say that you have to stoop low. You certainly don't have to be mean. If you provide a good service at a reasonable price, then you can actually, if you have the right product and you find the right niche, or sometimes just spend some time building it, it might take 5 or 10 years. I mean, certainly a lot of people that are wealthy, it took them 15, 20 years of building their business to get there. Preliminal. Yeah, I think we're affected by our immediate surroundings, dominant frequency of our surroundings. I do feel like if you're like hanging out with a lot of poor people, it's not all of them, but some of them kind of resent it if you start doing better than them. And I'm not even blaming them because I kind of get it because like they feel insecure that you didn't and they didn't, even though you both came from the same place. And when I hang out with people who made it and I didn't, I feel insecure about that too. I mean, so I'm not even blaming people, but I think, that's something I have to kind of keep a watch on and make sure that I don't become too envious and kind of keep, cognizant of how my mind is working. And, not that I don't also feel happy for them because you can have a mix of emotions, but it does seem like certain people maybe that won't be as happy as you think they'll be when you start making it. And then there's another batch where like, what can they get out of it? Like now you have to pay or whatever, and they want freebies. And so there's that group that can bring you down sometimes. And then there's going to be your friends that are genuinely happy and try to help you. But, there's going to be a mixed bag sometimes. And sometimes I've been surprised at how people responded. Yeah, so he said, see, it always shocks me that people can sue as much as they can in America and see, like, your response is exactly my thing. I just feel like the tree fell over. It's an act of God, it is not the fault of the homeowner. I don't really think you should be able to sue if a tree falls over on you. I really don't. It will be interesting, though, if it maybe comes out, maybe he was paralyzed at first, or maybe he hammed it up, and then, I wouldn't be surprised if that narrative came out. Many poor people who win the lottery end up in poverty again if you can't handle the money. Yeah, I think it's like 70% have like burned through all their money in like 5 to 8 years or something. It's a very large amount. I have kind of met enough people that I kind of get it because, like, having worked like in the like club officer position in some clubs and running my own business, And my parents, my mother run the business, and I've hung out with, and then I've worked in some smaller businesses. So I've just kind of got exposed to how it works. And I've learned you got to have some self-control, because you get $10,000 in your hands, but you can't just say, I have $10,000 to spend, because a bunch of it's got to go to rent, and it's got to go to more product to replace what you sold, and it's got to go to utilities, and it's got to go to all. You just can't spend it, and so it takes a lot of self-control. You got to reinvest. You have to think of which, where do I need most, and don't spend too much, but don't spend too little. You got to spend money to make money in a business, and a lot of people they get the money and they just don't have self-control. I don't know what to say. They just don't have it. You talk to them and they just, it's kind of like, it's like when you're going to go on a diet tomorrow, like tomorrow I'm going to stop eating ice cream, and they never get there, like it's always tomorrow until there's no more money. And I even heard of one guy who won the lottery twice and did the same thing twice. And I think then it's much more miserable, because you know how bad you screwed up. Like at the end of it, you're poor, and it's totally your fault now. At least before, when you were poor, you could blame it on society and not having a good job and stuff. But once you had like 6 million and blew through it all in 3 years, you can't blame anybody but yourself. Getting the money to create the environment, make more money is the challenge. It is, but that's why you build it slow. I mean, a lot of people took 10 or 15 years to build. Like when I started my business, I had $300 and I invested in some product, and then I sold that, and that product yielded $600. And then I took, 500 of those dollars and I reinvested, and then I just kept going like that. And now, I have a lot of product here, but leave it in the bank account that makes you money longer. I don't think that works anymore. I think saving helps if you're a wage slave, basically. But if you don't make enough money, it's pretty hard to save. And I think as an entrepreneur myself, I just think there's way more money in me, like investing it in myself in a business, not in like Starbucks coffee, but like as a business. So, but that is one thing, like when money gets tight, when you're a business person, you still have to spend. You have to spend your way out. You have to spend your way out smartly, though. You can't just go, I'm not going to spend it, because then you choke off the lifeblood of your business. And that's the hardest thing for me. Like if things start to get tight, I'm just like, I don't want to spend money, but I have to spend money on more stuff. All right, so we're talking about what the logo of that 70s show. 70s show. Opener. What do you call that? Like that background bit. Is that the legit one? What are we talking about on that? So I don't even know what Mandela we're trying to talk about. I got the same flip-flop with Kikoma and Kikoman sauce. For me, it was Kikoma. Really? Okay. I've only known Kikoman. Did it always have 2 Ks, though? I'm not even sure on that one. Kiko. Let me just write it out. Kiko. Yeah, okay. I think 2 Ks is right. Or was it 1K? I'm not sure. There was definitely not a C, because then it looks like Kiko Man. American traffic lights are horizontal. I don't know what you mean, horizontal. They're like this, right? I mean, I haven't seen them like that. They're still like this. Green used to be on the top, now it's on the bottom. This one's tricky because sometimes other states are sort of weird, and I don't know the other states that well. I mean, I've had it where I was traveling in one of the neighboring states, and I got off the freeway, and some of the traffic light setups were like a little weird, and there was a few times where I'm like, I'm not sure what to do now. Please don't give me a ticket. I'm confused. Japanese don't have C in the alphabet. Yeah, I know, but you know what? That's K's. They don't have K's either. They don't have anything. So they have their own letters. There's 3 different letter styles. None of it involves any of the Roman alphabet or whatever ours is. They have sounds. That's it. Kikoma sauce. Huh. Interesting. Somebody remembers it. Yeah, I think it can't be. There's no C's just because when I look at it, I would think it looks like Kiko Man, and I did not look at it and think it looks like Kiko Man. So it was Kiko. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe somewhere there's horror. That's tricky because I can only tell you, like, California, in some places near here, that they've always been like that. And if I go out there, they still are. Because I would totally freak out if suddenly I went out there and they were like that. Does Japan have... I don't think they have a ch sound, do they? I can't think of them having that sound. But, you know, there might be some weird places in the United States. It's, you know, you got to realize the United States is bigger than Australia, so. Tool stations and some bridges have horizontal lights. Okay. Okay, so what's the logo for that 70s show? Logopedia. Let's see if they have a Logopedia. Okay. Wikimedia. Logopedia. You know, the whole thing looks wrong to me because I remember it more like puffy. I don't know how to describe it. More rounded. Like, it just wasn't this font. That W, definitely, I see what you mean by the W. I definitely don't remember that. But I remember the whole thing a little more like this, but kind of like a puffy inflated balloon, not like a snake. I don't remember this T like this. I just remember it like... The irony is I used to have some of that kind of font. Let's see, 60s font, I would call it. It was more like the 60s font to me. Popular... Let me see if I can find some. Popular... 60s groovy style fonts. I don't even know how to describe it. I'm gonna be mad if I can't find them. More like this, maybe? Here. A little more like that. Here. More like this. This style is more like what I remember. Maybe not quite that fat, but the groovy script. A little more, yeah. That's how I remember it, being more like that. And a little more like that. Because in the 70s, that style was still somewhat popular, let's just say. Even though it's technically the 60s. Okay, Jack remembers Puffy. Curvy, yes. Okay. Yeah, and I don't remember and the W wouldn't have been like that because stuff was puffy. You know, it had that kind of inflated, like there was air look, so you couldn't like bend it. Okay, so the whole font of the '70s show, it kind of now has this bendy metal look instead, like it's bent. I totally take issue with the T looking like a table or a pillar, and the A, well, maybe the A, but the T, no. I also feel like the O and the 7 is really bugging me. It's not right. Okay, so I totally agree with you that there's something awry. Ever heard of Volvo Island? I don't know what the heck. Volvo Island is a man-made island near Ottawa, Illinois. A 2001 Volvo sedan, placed since 2012. The vehicle has remained a distinctive landmark. Okay, well, I have never heard of it. I just don't know if I really would have because I don't live in that area. Garnered attention as a tourist attraction. Visible on Google Maps. Okay. Well, how did they get it over there? Would they just like shove it over there? I feel like if they had done that, then some cops would have like run the registration and said, Mr. Smeckledorf, you're littering on a national park reservation, blah, blah, blah. I mean, even in 2012, I find it a little hard to get away with. Maybe it's sort of like a rundown area and they didn't care. I don't know. I don't think that you could get away with that here, though. They get nothing right. 60s font for the 70s show. Well, you know, that was like the early 70s, so there was still a lot of 60s stuff around. It didn't just like go away. The puffy hair and... In 1972, we watched the crowd at Summerfest throw mud at the Partridge Family. They left the stage after the first song. I was shocked. I didn't understand how the people could be so mean. Wow! You know, I have never heard of anything like that. I would be really shocked, honestly, as well. I've just not... at least where I live, there was usually like a level of decorum that was shown... if somebody was on stage. Maybe you wouldn't cheer that hard, but unless, you know, I don't know. I just, I mean, the Partridge Family, they can sing okay and stuff. It's not like they're caterwauling. Where is the American Ottawa? Yeah, I don't know. Where is the American Ottawa? You know, I thought it was Canada too. Maybe that's part of it. Ottawa. That's spelling. Ottawa. That's the problem. The American Ottawa, Illinois. Located in LaSalle County, north central Illinois. Huh. It's interesting because my parents are from Illinois. Derived from Native American word meaning to trade. Reflects its historical significance. It does feel like there's like a kind of a copying of names. Like, stuff is showing up in California that has a similar name in Canada, too. Ottawa, Illinois. Yeah, places have weird names, but streets usually get boring names. It's right near Starving Rock. Yeah, I don't know. Ottawa, Illinois. People know that one. Yeah. Kiko Man, Greg Abbott. Now I'm curious. I mean, if Abbott actually described himself as being paralyzed from the waist down, then I feel like the definition is paralyzed, you know, like you can't move. That's the definition of it. And I do feel like he moved it fairly easily there. Is that the last move? I think it is. Huh. Interesting. Okay, that's the newspaper one. ZZ. This one, I almost made this one the thumbnail. Newly discovered bumpy snailfish off the coast of California, of course, have announced the discovery of 3 new deep-sea snailfish. This was found by Jackie. Also, last week, there was one, the light flash memory blocker, where you could block memories from light flashing. That was by WB Woman who found that. So I apologize. I don't think I called her name out for crediting her for that last week. But yeah, it was her. WB Woman. Good find. All right, so this one's from Jackie. It's interesting they find these new creatures and they're not boring. Like in the old days, they'd find something to be some boring little tiny fish, but now everything is bizarre looking. So it's a snail fish with fringes, and I wouldn't be surprised if it gets weirder over time. I almost made this thing the thumbnail, but then I decided to make that airplane thing the thumbnail. All right, and then what other ones that were found? Where did those go? The other ones were kind of weird too, but not quite as weird as that one. So apparently there's a bunch of snailfish. This is a previously unknown snailfish. 2 other snailfish were also announced in a new study. All right, let me just look at what snailfish even look like. Snailfish. What? There's nothing. All right. That's not helpful. Snailfish. What the heck is a snailfish anyways? Okay. Ew, what the heck is that thing? That's gross. What is that? It looks like it has a human face. Red fish that is bloated. Okay, whatever. It's a snailfish? Okay, that's a fandom. It's not real. At least not yet. All right, that is a snailfish. That is pretty gross looking. Okay, well, there you go. The newer ones, of course, are more strange than ever. That's the other thing that surprises me is, like, you would think that the newer ones they find are the ugly, boring ones, because those bizarre ones are way more likely to stand out as a new kind of species. When you see something like that, you're like, there's no way we've seen those before. Never go in the ocean. It's too weird. Alright, I'm gonna skip the clown motel. I don't know anything about clown history, so I'm not gonna know if there's any Mandelas. Alright, this is another one from Jackie. Jackie is a lot of them this time. Yes. I think these are all Jackie but one. Okay. So pandas keep changing. First, now they have no problem reproducing. That was never true. And then they actually are perfectly fine surviving in the wild. They were never actually had any problems in the wild, and all of that was just inaccurate. And now apparently, and we saw this with skunks. I think it first showed up in a viral video where there was a dog doing it. And this dog stood up on its two front legs and did like this handstand and then peed on a wall, and that went viral around. Ironically, it was around 2012. And now this stuff's coming into reality because skunks do it. They do a handstand and pee. Okay, now we got pandas, probably other creatures too, but I just found out about the pandas. So pandas, apparently the male pandas, and this one actually has a dirty butt too, but that I think that's just dirt. They like to do a handstand to pee on the tree higher, and of course they're saying it's some kind of courting ritual or something. Everything's a courting ritual, whatever. So this is the new thing. Some of them even do more handstands than that, but here's another example, I guess. And some of them do like a full-on handstand too. So that's the new thing, that male pandas like to do handstands in order to pee. And of course there's some viral video going on now, like that some panda did a handstand in the enclosure where a lot of people were watching, and that was a big deal. So yeah, pandas. I'm starting to they're kind of filthy now. I don't know. Some of the animals that used to be really clean, like polar bears, used to be sparkling white for me. And now they're like kind of dingy, and I don't know. It just it's like, quit it. They don't look as cute. They're just dingy and kind of goofy and stinky and... Alright, so this is another one that Jackie found. Apparently there was... I don't know if you remember when you were a kid and they were like, oh, someday we're going to have flying cars. Well, apparently we've had flying cars since at least 1954. And it was this. And there was a number of them made, like 6 or 7 or something. The 1954 Taylor Aero car, N101D. It was interesting because I was reading somewhere where they're like, well, people forget that flying cars have been around for 70 years and something. Like, people forget it wasn't around that back then. But I think now the thing is that we just, with all the nitrogen in the air and the change in the atmosphere and stuff, we don't need the big long wings that we once did. And so I think that's why this makes this possible. If the wings had to be 5 times longer than this, then this would not be doable. But now you can get aloft with these little dinky, stinky wings. And that video is gone, but there it is. So apparently the tail section and the wings like fold behind it and then are pulled along like a trailer. And supposedly, though, they fold on quite easily and then operate as the wings. So this part, I guess, then folds down and back or something. I don't know of a video that shows how it attaches, but you can see from the above photo, it still works. It was just at the tail end of that generation that I grew up with the dream of a flying car designed by Moulton Taylor in 1949. Only 5 were ever produced. Must be converted into an airplane with wings that fold forward. The vehicle was marketed in the early 50s as being so effortless that a woman could do it without soiling her gloves. The video below is a newsreel. Yeah, unfortunately, no, there's no newsreel now. Maybe the timeline has not built the newsreel yet. There's not much info on this car. I feel like it's kind of new in the timeline. Yes, so it is a real flying car. And it is really flying here. This is a legitimate photo of it flying more recently, but it is the original style. Yeah, no, they can. They can. They can fly. I know. I feel like that the current physics allows it. It just didn't before. I think that's why we can do so much more with drones now, too, because the physics has changed. Flying cars crash into each other at Chinese air show. Well, I don't think it was these ones, but the Shengpeng Aero HD vehicles collide in midair. Whoops. Okay, so they're doing the drone style ones. Okay. So, you know, stuff like this, it just kind of helps shop around the idea that these cars exist. I did know already, I've heard recently about the drone-style Chinese cars. So notice that they didn't actually crash on their own. It was, you know, bad flying, apparently. But if it hadn't hit an obstacle, these things would not have crashed. But I've heard that they pretty much have these down pretty safe, and you can rent them. And for tourism, like if there's like a beautiful scenery and mountains, you can rent them and it'll fly, and they're pretty easy to fly and blah blah. Because it's basically like they're like gigantic drones. I think the main issue we still have though is the power. They suck a lot of power, so that's where the main expense is just powering these things. I mean, it kind of is getting like the Jetsons, though, because they're like drones, and in the Jetsons, that's how they were. Remember? Brrr. Jetsons fly by. Yeah, that's right. I think they did just give verbal commands, if I remember right. We're, like, not that far off. The main thing that's holding it off is the cost of the power. And I think we will get a breakthrough at some point. Probably not in the too distant future, where we'll have like we need like better. Basically, we need better power storage, some kind of a, or if we had a really good power generation that was small, didn't weigh too much. But it would need to be some kind of whatever goes into making the power didn't cost a lot, because these flying vehicles take a lot of power. Of course, the other option is if they get anti-grav, that does not suck a lot of power. Most of the power going into flying is just to keep fighting gravity. So if you didn't have to fight gravity, you would not need nearly as much power. So yeah, anybody remember? I don't think, when was the first flying car? When was the first flying car made? Because those are pretty sophisticated. So one would imagine the first flying car was 1843. Except for it was not capable of road travel and failed to fly. That's not much of a flying car if it can neither drive nor fly. Patented, but could not do either. I'm not counting that one. The first vehicle widely recognized as a flying car, the Curtiss autoplane, 1917. Detachable wings and a propeller. It achieves short hops. It never achieves sustained flight. The first flying car to receive FAA authentication was the Fulton Amphibian in 1946. Successfully completed test flights. Okay, so that was just what? 8 years before this one we just looked at. All right, and this was the first certified one, was the Moulton Taylor Aero car, which was certified in 49. Okay, so kind of keep an eye on it. It looks like 49 was the first, 46 to 49 were the first kind of fairly functional ones. I'm going to bet it goes back in time. First flying taxis come to Dubai. I'm not surprised at all that Dubai and China are at the forefront. I'm betting you they made them in China. China's like the king of drones, or the queen of drones. They are, and these are like a drone style thing. So Dubai all set to launch air taxis. Yeah, so yeah, nice. How much does it cost to power them though? Those are pretty styling. Hopefully there's redundancy. If a few of these go out, you could at least land, hopefully. Because that is the main issue. There's going to be, what, bird strikes and stuff. Fully electric air taxis. So if you had it like an AI stabilizer, which I don't think would be that complicated. I don't think we're that far away from being able to fly these fairly easily, having AI handle most of the actual driving. The main issue is still power, the cost to power it. Jetsons were a great cartoon in context of the time. Yeah, you're right. It was. It's an interesting concept of the times. Even before we had good sound effects and you had to do it by wiggling your tongue. Brrr. Okay, so Jackie had mentioned one of the weird tree kangaroos. Well, some time ago, I'm like, tree kangaroos didn't used to exist. Well, now there's like a bajillion kinds. They have really, really stupidly long tails, some of them. That looks so fake, okay? Is it a monkey or a kangaroo? I don't know. But there's all these different kinds now of these things. Maybe I'll just flick through and see what all we see. So these are all different kinds. So I noticed lately there's kind of like this weird, like, irregular ring situation going on, which is interesting on the tails, because historically you would see animals with a pattern of rings, but they were usually fairly symmetrical, I guess. They weren't just kind of random like these creatures are getting. And the last time I looked, I don't think I've ever seen one with this weird dorsal stripe and then all these random. So that's a very interesting coloration. When do you ever see an animal that's like dark but then light but dark? Normally the dorsal stripes are on a lighter animal and there's a darkened dorsal stripe. But this guy's got it all going on. He wants to be dark but still have a dorsal stripe. So very interesting. It just occurs to me I've never really seen an animal with that style of patterning. I'm sure that we're going to get more. I'm quite sure I've seen the backs of these and never saw a dorsal stripe on them though. And their tail is getting ridiculous. So I'm pretty sure that one has a dorsal. Of course, some of these others we're not actually seeing their backs. So these are all the ones we have now. Grizzled, Loomholtz, Bennett's, Ursine, Machis, Dorias, Ifola, Sari, Goodfellow, Golden Mantled, which is very similar to Goodfellow, Lowlands Tree, Dingiso, Tenkyle, and Wandawoy, thought to be extinct. Okay, I don't even have a good picture of those. I think I did look up the grizzle just because it just looked kind of interesting. So that's grizzled tree kangaroo, which is one of the ones I already mentioned. We've already got, 2 subspecies known. This is ridiculous. Just, my brain is like exploding because it doesn't seem like it was that long ago when there was one tree kangaroo that showed up, and now there's like 15 of them. So things are accelerating rapidly. It's crazy town. I think we're going to just end up with like every area has 700 nearly extinct species only exists in this one lake in the world. And I saw that thing about that release date of 100 years. Yeah, you mentioned that. That was on the comments. I have a feeling it's going to suck, though. How much money can you put into a movie and no one's going to be watching it and paying for tickets? I guess maybe they're sending out, 100 special tickets, but you don't get to cash them in for 100 years. How much money do you think you're going to be able to charge for those tickets? I don't think it's going to be enough to make a good movie anyway. So 100 years from now, then I guess they're going to watch the movie. Are they going to even have... They're going to have to include a machine that can play the movie, because I just don't see 100 years from now we're going to be using, CDs or whatever they're using now. Someone find this movie and leak it. At least let them sell all their special tickets, then leak it. America should bring back the Muppet Show. Didn't somebody get arrested in the UK for calling the cops a Muppet? There doesn't take much to get arrested in the UK anymore. Because apparently, from my understanding, it's not even a swear word. It just means like you're an idiot or something. Muppet is supposed to stand for mechanized puppet, like they used to use in shows. You heard about the book that was released a day before Charlie Kirk's assassination about his assassination. So that's a tricky one. That's a tricky one because, first of all, the book was clearly written by AI, and AIs can write a book in like a few hours. Amazon swears that the book was actually uploaded after his assassination, but for some reason had a date of the day before. Maybe that could happen if there was some kind of time zone thing or something. I'm not sure. So that's another one where I'm like kind of feeling like Scully a little. Like, well, there are possible logical explanations for it. It did look like some of the stuff written in the book wasn't accurate as to how it actually spun out too. So they didn't know the future of how all that stuff would actually happen. But yet it's still just really interesting. It's just interesting enough to really stir the imagination. So I still think it's interesting. How did they get the date to be one day before? I still haven't got a full explanation on that. No one alive today will see the film. I don't know. Like, I think you could live to 100, so maybe I wouldn't, but who knows what kind of life extension crap we'll have by the next 20 years, too. Did anyone read the book? So Amazon pulled it. So I have heard that somebody said somebody found some old pages of it. Like, usually when they upload a book, you could read a couple pages for free. So supposedly somebody read some pages, and then they had the explanation, and it was a little off. It definitely looked like AI wrote a predictive book of approximately how the AI thought it would spin out. And of course it was a little off. Do I want to tell Robin how I remember our flag looking? So, yeah. Let me find the old flag. It was the old flag that they changed it in this timeline. Old American flag with different, what was that flag called? I think, not that one. Let me see if I can, not that one. Here. It was like that, with the stars all even, but I think there's what, only 48? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 30. No, I think there was one more line. It wasn't 36, it was like 40 something. Maybe that one. 48. Yes, I think it's this one. 48. That's it. That's it. So there was only 48 stars, and the teachers told us that basically when the last few, which was Puerto Rico, and I believe it was Hawaii, added in. No, it was Guam. I think it was Guam. Puerto Rico and Guam, they're like, we're not changing the flag for those people. So they're just going to have to... They're just like, no, it lines up really nice, all the stars and everything, and so you guys can add on, but we're not changing the flag. And that's how it was. So for me, when I was growing up until around 2012-ish, this was the flag, and with them all nice and lined up, and not a full 50. And all the flags look like that, all of them, and then suddenly they all looked the other way that they do now. And I remember looking, I go, what's wrong with it? Why are they weird? And at the time I was like, I couldn't quite figure it out. But then one day I saw this, I'm like, yes, that's how it was. It was, they were lined up, and there was only 48 of them. This is it. So yeah, I guess, I don't know. I don't meet many people who remember that old flag either. Yeah, the Aussie flag for me was a giant kangaroo, so it's completely different. I have seen it shift since then with that star getting bigger, but the UK was a lot more busy in this timeline, because for me, they were not all involved in Australia so much, and Australia had a Roo flag. And also, Hawaii did not have the UK. The Union Jack was not on the Hawaii flag either. I mean, I don't remember the Union Jack flag being on any other country besides Britain. The other countries had their own freaking flags. They don't have the same rights to vote in Puerto Rico and Guam. Those, how they are has shifted a little with the Mandela too. So they used to be commonwealths, and they were, if you were born there, you were a citizen, but you couldn't, like, they didn't have voting rights. And I actually don't know how that works. I think you'd have to move to the States and become a resident, because, for instance, if I just fly right now to New York, I cannot vote in New York. I have to live there. I think it's like a year. And once you live there a year, you become a resident of there, and then you can vote. So, like, say you were in Puerto Rico. I'm pretty sure the way it works is, since you're already a citizen of the United States, it's just that the land there does not have voting rights in our country. So if you wanted to vote for the president of the United States, you'd have to move to someplace in the United States, live there long enough to have residency, and then you could vote. You can still vote in Puerto Rico for Puerto Rico politicians and stuff, though, but just not here. And Guam was the same way. And they actually, like, the way it was then, Guam, I know, could make its own rules, but my mom said, well, they usually just mostly follow the United States rules. Russia's flag isn't the same. I do not remember. Well, Russia used to have that hammer sickle thing, but that was the Soviet Union, and I don't even know what the Russian flag was. Soviet Union flag. Oh, so the Soviet Union flag also did Mandela change? But that flag doesn't exist anymore. So that star was tiny and it didn't have like a red center. It was like solid and smaller. And then the grabby part for the sickle was not all fancy like that. It was like way more stylized. Like the sickle now, also it's kind of like the sickle is uneven. It used to be more like a crescent. Now like this end part got long. So that's how that changed for me. But then the Russia flag, I don't even know if it changed or not. I looked at it recently. I do think it's interesting that it's red, white, and blue, but so that's the Russia flag now. And I don't know what the Russia flag before was. Didn't have a star. It could be, actually. It could be that it didn't have a star. So, I do remember the star shifting from one to the other, but yeah, you're right. It might have not had a star. Just hammer sickle. A lot of stuff's getting that star. So that stripy one, the red, white, and blue, that is the flag of Russia. And Russia is not the Soviet Union, so it's just its own. But I don't know what... So, like, when Russia was part of the Soviet Union, I don't know what the member states, flags look like. History, okay. History of Australian flag. There better be a kangaroo on there. I'm going to laugh. I don't know if I've ever looked at the history of the Australian flag. Flag of Australia. Let's see. Blah, blah, blah. See, that's huge now. Oh, yeah, you have. Yeah, see, there's no roos in here. I don't know. What am I even looking at on this history? I'm not sure. Oh, there is a kangaroo on there. Oh, that's hilarious. It's a really ugly looking kangaroo, though. It doesn't even look like it. Wait, is that a kangaroo? It looks like a giant rat. Okay, so for me, though, that there was no Union Jack anywhere. There was just a big roo, and it didn't look like this rat thing. I don't know what that is. Six-tailed kangaroo. A six-tailed kangaroo? No. That's interesting, though. Okay. Let me say. Entries. Maybe if they had drawn it better, there would have been a chance. The stars are showing up everywhere. Let's see. I haven't looked at. Oh, it's not ESCO. Let me just check ESCO real quick, though. ESCO has changed, but not so much recently. So it didn't used to say City of Choice. I do like that addition. And then, like, the letters are getting, like, sucked into this vortex. That did not used to be a thing. All right, now California flag. Oh, my God. California flag got a star. Did not used to have a star for me. A lot of people remember the star, though. And I don't remember the red stripe, and I don't remember it saying Republic. It did not say Republic. I'm like, what the hell? Republic? In fact, before I got the word Republic, a lot of people joked about it. they would say Republic of California and they'd use a K and a K, because in the old days we would kind of say, if you were like super communist like Soviet Union, they would use a bunch of K's, because in Russian the K sound is always a K. They do not ever use a C for the K sound. If there's a C, it's a S sound. It's actually convenient because there's just one freaking sound, you know. So this would be like Sal instead of Cal if it was Russian. So that was one of the jokes, is they would take all the S sounding C's and slap a K in there, and then like now we're pretending we're Russian, you know. So that was so they would joke Republic of California with K's. And then suddenly that joke went away, and then there really was a republic on there. And I was like, I thought it was part of the joke at first. I'm like, oh, somebody made a joke flag. But, and this star showed up, and this stripe was smaller when it first showed, and then it got real fat. So, yeah, definitely crazy. Why do we have a star? That's weird. Escondido, that's the city I live in. The stripe under the flag is new. You mean on the California one? Yeah. So when did that? It showed up a few years ago for me, but yeah. You might remember. No, it wasn't boxing. It was like jumping. There was a brown kangaroo on their flag, and it was jumping. And I know that was their flag because I saw it over and over, and I was like, they have the craziest flag. It was kind of a goofy looking roo. Like the way it jumped, it just looked kind of dorky. But it wasn't boxing. It was just a kangaroo. It was a brown kangaroo. I don't know. It seems like a lot of the flag animals, they just kind of look a little stupid. And like, I would say that the same for California. I mean, it just doesn't, it looks kind of amateur hour. This thing does keep changing subtly. It's got the mouth with the tongue now. And before, when I looked at it, it didn't have a red tongue, but now it has a red tongue. That's something I saw recently, that it's got a red tongue. Did not have a red tongue. So the red showing up, because it didn't have any red, because it didn't have the red stripe, it didn't have a red star, but now it has those, and now it has a red tongue. And the grass has gotten stupider looking, but yeah, it didn't used to look this stupid, but it still wasn't the world's best looking bear. And that's kind of how I felt about the kangaroo. It was sort of like, not the best looking artwork ever invented. So that's another reason why it made me laugh. I don't know if I even have seen a decent looking animal on a flag, though. Yeah, I don't know. They call it hidden. Yeah, Escondido is like Spanish for hidden. And they don't even agree why it's called that. Some place people say maybe it's because it was a valley. It's in a valley, but it's really not any more hidden than any other city in a valley, and almost all cities are in a valley because it's hard to put a city on the side of a mountain. So it's interesting. I am glad that City of Choice showed up. I hope that bodes well for the future of our city. Yeah, so Berlin has totally freaking moved. And yeah, I don't know. Europe is a total disaster. And there's all those stans all over the place. And a chunk of Russia is all like split from the main body. And there's all kinds of crazy stuff. So, a couple of years ago, I looked up and I saw the moon and a giant star there. And I think it was one of the planets. But there are those big stars now too, so maybe that's why they're showing up in the flag, because they're showing up in the sky and they're like planets, but there's like this big fat effing star up there, and it kind of spooked me because the stars had shown up in a couple of the flags, and then I walk out there and there's the moon and a giant effing star right next to it. I'm like, there it is. The bear was the bear black? I think it was brown for me, but it was, I don't know, a little bit more realistic and shaggy looking, I would say. It would make sense that we had black bears, though, because that's really the main bear that we have in California. I would say we do have the brown bears further up, but the blacks are like much further down. Yeah, I don't know. I think the name of the city is cool. Hidden City, Escondido. I mean, it's really not the fanciest city. It's kind of like, for this region, it was sort of like the poor city. And we got a really good deal on a house, but, you know, the whole area was kind of getting more expensive anyway. So we were able to get a pretty good chunk of land for not very expensive, and that's why we went here. So, like, this area, even if you're kind of the dingy city, you're still a pretty good city. And so that was our kind of thing. It's like, we could buy, like, in this other city and pay twice as much for the exact same thing and didn't really see the benefit of it. I still think it was a good deal. All right, this one is from Taro Eto, our friend in Japan. A lot of theirs kind of is hard for me because there's a lot of Japanese ones, and I'm like, I'm not that familiar with Japan. This thing is just so bizarre. And so I'm not even sure if this is supposed to be the Mandela. It was built in the, like, 92. So I don't know enough about Japan to know if this thing was there or not. But it's just weird, and I think there's kind of some Mandelas wrapped into it. So in recent years, I've heard about the Dogu, which is kind of like this mythical, I thought it was like a mythical race that lived in, like, existed in some historical text, right? But apparently Dogu are, it's like a word for these figurines made during the later part of Jomon, I'm not even sure how to say that, Jomon period, 14,000 to 400 BC of prehistoric Japan. So basically you get these crazy clay figurines from prehistoric, and what do they represent? You know, it's the usual. Maybe it's a fertility symbol, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Nobody knows crap, and everybody's guessing. And so this is the thing, though. Like, they have, some of them have these giant freaking, like, they almost look like they have some kind of weird glasses on, or like they have giant eyes with giant lids. I feel like giant eyes with giant lids is the most logical explanation. There is a thing, though, where there's snow is very intense and the sun is bright on the snow, and you can get snow blind from the amount of light that is reflected from the snow. So what they do is they wear these glasses with one tiny little slit in them, so that it blocks the majority of the light, but you can still peek through this slit and see where you're going. And what that does is it prevents your retinas from getting sunburned, because you can, I think it's even permanent damage that you can get, and they call it snow blindness. So, I mean, I think way back from when the words, for me, snow blindness just meant it was hard to see. I don't remember it being that you went blind, but that is how it's been now for a while. So these could be these, like, snow blindness glasses. I still feel like the most likely answer is that they're just eyelids, though. But apparently these Dogu, they come in all different styles. So this is a common style, which I have freaking never seen before in my life. But these are some other styles here. So, you know, you could see they look like some kind of astronaut thing or something. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. Could be kind of an astronaut thing, but those look way more astronaut thingy to me. And they're cool looking, though. So you can see these are some kind of weird goggles, and then some kind of rebreather, and some kind of suit, and then why are the hands so tiny, and then all puffy, and so those are the Dogu. And in the 90s, they apparently one that looked like this, was found near this city, and this is a train station. And when they redid the train station, they decided to incorporate a giant Dogu that they had found nearby into the pattern. So, like, it's not weird enough. I think it's kind of cool, though. I mean, I do. I don't always agree with modern art, but I think that's cool. So I don't know. I just want to put on there. I am not sure what Taro Eto was trying to say was the Mandela, but I don't know. That Dogu thing is just weird. Was it temporarily blind, the snow blindness? Permanent. Photokeratitis is generally not permanent and resolves between 24 to 72 hours. Good to know. Caused by sunburn of the cornea. Okay, cornea, not retinas. Can reflect off snow, water, or sand. Oh yeah, we have that super white sand now, so. Called pain, gritty feeling, redness, light sensitivity are temporary. They can be severe if the condition is not properly managed or there are repeated exposures. It could lead to more serious complications, including permanent vision damage. However, the vast majority of cases do not result in lasting harm, provided the eyes are rested and protected from further UV exposure. While snow blindness itself is not permanent, complications like infection from eye rubbing can cause long-term damage. Okay, so it's not the blindness itself, but maybe some kind of other issues. All right, so yay, it's temporary. Good to know. However, if you're ever stuck out there and your eyes are starting to hurt, you can get like leaves or something and just cover your eyes, and you just cut like a little slit and look through those. And that can protect your eyes. And now in present time we have Labubu. Yeah, Labubu is that new doll that's real popular from China. How do these things even happen? It's just another doll. It's like the new Beanie Babies or something. Venus is in the sky until sun is really up. It was not like this. It is changing all the time. Like, I'll see something weird and then the news will say this happens every year. And then I have never seen it before. And the next year will come and it will not happen again. Yeah, I don't know what's humans. We just, that's the latest thing. Everybody's got to have it. I mean, it's not really new that there are these cycles because we had those before, but like Cabbage Patch Kids and stuff. Isn't Labubu China? I thought it was real popular in China. Well, you know, they said something about some Chinese person was spotted with Labubu, like some Chinese famous person, and that started. So I assumed that it was Chinese because of the Chinese famous person, but I might be wrong. Labubu is a line of plush toys created by Hong Kong illustrator Ka Sing Lung. Series zoomorphic elves with exaggerated facial expressions. And some of them are creepy. In fact, they all are kind of creepy. That's kind of creepy, isn't it, with the teeth? It looks like they're kind of high-end. That one doesn't look so high-end, but like that one looks kind of like pretty good fur and stuff. So, yeah, apparently some famous person was seen with one of these creepy face things. This is the first time I've really looked at them. So they all have the creepy face. I saw one with the creepy face, and I just figured, I didn't think they all had it. Yeah. That one is a little less bad, but yeah, it's not really my thing, but I'm not really into stuffed animals anyways. Like, I have one, and it was my dog's favorite toy until she got really old, and she got blind, and she couldn't see the toy anymore, so she didn't want it anymore because she couldn't see it. And she was pretty nice with her toy, so she never tore it up, so I still have it. And it's like in memory of her. more. And it looked like her, so she thought it was like her puppy. She would treat it kind of like her puppy. I don't know if I want to say she thought it was her puppy, but she was a dog that did kind of like stuff that looked like her. So she liked other dogs that looked like her. She liked stuffed animals that looked like her. So I have that stuffed animal, and it's like in her memorial. Why are they popular? I don't know. Why is anything popular? Why is Beanie Babies popular? I thought Cabbage Patch Kids were kind of stupid. I mean, like, but I'm just not into dolls, you know? Even the dolls I have, they're like, it's a dog. It's not even a person. Your camera is having a weird slow blur effect, but maybe that's just my phone. I don't know. I haven't heard any other complaints, and it looks like up here. Oh, look, my hair looks terrible. It's kind of a thing, like when my hair looks really good in real life, it does not look good on the camera. And then, I don't know, it's the focal length of the film or something. Then there's times when I'm like, oh, my hair looks like crap, and it's all, and then I look on the camera, I'm like, oh, it looks great on camera. But I'm not a really big fan of how it looks in camera right now, but I mean, it definitely could be worse. I'm not really complaining. But okay, so this is a dogu, which is a clay figurine from this prehistoric times in Japan. And I guess this is the most commonly, well, the best known one are these kind of dogu with these big weird eyes, which came from this style. These are pretty cool looking old things, though, you know. I mean, like, this is not unskilled workmanship, which is also really interesting to me. Okay, so I ran into this. Did I get everything else? Okay, so yeah, those big eye ones are Shikoki Dogu. Or maybe it's Shikoki Dogu Railway Stations. I don't know why I wrote Shikoki. I think Shikoki is the eyes. Arrow car. So that was from Taro. Almost everything else is Jackie. Yeah, everything else is Jackie for today. And a few I added into. This one, though, I just ran into this today. So there was a thing that was saying that this thing called, which apparently is called diaresis and diacritic, and they're saying that these, basically if you have a letter with these two dots above it, are sometimes in English, and it's a diacritic. That was not in English. I mean, they had it in like German and stuff. That there was no freaking diacritics in English. There just was not. I'm like, no. And then they're saying that naive had it, and there's no effing way that naive had it. The word naive. The word naive had like a dash thing, and that was for to say that the accent was on naive. And I kind of had always assumed it came from the French, like that it would have that dash. And when I think back on it, like, why did we keep the dash on, or not the dash, but what is that accent mark? It's like to say that the flick, whatever. I don't even know what you call those, because we don't really use those in English, but in French, it means that the accent goes on that syllable. So it's not naive, it's naive. So you would put that flick on the I to say that Eve is the accent, right? Naive. And so the problem is that I have no idea how to put that flick using normal keyboard, so I just would leave it off. And then it was like, oh, that's not how you spell. I'm like, well, how do you spell naive then? Because I can't make the flick. But now they're saying that naive has this diacrit thing. See, like Naive with the two dots. I'm like, no, it doesn't. Naivete. No, it was naive. Well, it does have the accent on the end. I guess if it was naivete, you could move the accent down, but it did not have the two freaking dots. And I know the two dots because I encountered them in like German and stuff, but they were not in English. And okay, I did see them in Noel, but that was not an English word, so that's why it had the two dots. And that was, in fact, the only word in English that I ever saw the two dots. Naive didn't have it. That's my point. I draw the line. Then they're like, oh, it used to be in words like cooperate and re-enter, and I've never heard of that either. So apparently they're saying that those two dots mean when there's two vowels next to each other, it tells you which vowel to put the emphasis on. So it is in fact an emphasis one. So naive with the emphasis flick would make more sense, is used the same way as like the emphasis flick on naive. But I have never heard of it. In fact, the two dots that I remember learning, and I assume it's still the same, just had to do with like the pronunciation of the U sound would be like instead of you, ooh, you know, like you, where you, how you made that sound. The sound was different, basically. It was not an accent, but apparently these two dots in English were accents. I am very, very suspicious. I probably would have let it go, but when they told me that Naive had them, I'm like, no, 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 no. Naive had that flick mark, like French. Okay. Chloe and Zoe have them? Like, no, 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 no. No, Chloe and Zoe did not have the dots. So, I don't know what this one's boots is or whatever. I don't even know what that is. The Boots Constellation? I don't even know what that... Okay, so boots... I don't even know how to pronounce it. Bootes? Even with the dots, I don't know how to... Bronte. So, I don't know. It seems like we're getting these freaking dots in the language. And this is just bizarre to me to watch the actual language just like morph into... I don't know, more. This is like a whole nother grammar showing up here, okay? More German words in English language. Yeah, there was no freaking two dots. I'm sorry. Naive for sure was the flick. I have actually been talking for years about where did the flick mark go on Naive. I guess you had to get rid of it because we're going to add the two dots. My last name had two dots. It meant ah instead of I. Okay, so, but here they're saying it just changes the place of accent. It does not change the sound, so. I don't think it means the same in English as it does in other languages, because I'm quite sure in German it made the oo sound. At least when it's over the U's. I don't know what sound it made for the others. As I watched the whole thing where this guy was showing you how to make the sound with the dots versus not with the dots in German. And don't even ask me why I watched it, because I haven't even learned German, but there you go. Sometimes I just watch silly stuff. We're getting close to the, yeah, German's going to become the second language of the United States. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, this one's not a Mandela, but I just thought it was really interesting. So, I'll stick it in. Well, maybe it is a Mandela, because we know the gut has changed. But, yeah, I think it is a Mandela in a way, because this goes back at least 10 years now. And I don't think 10 years ago we knew this. But now there's articles saying 10 years ago we knew. And I think 10 years ago, we were just starting to guess, where they were just starting to say that it appears that the gut makes some of the serotonin that goes in your body. And I think maybe they had guessed as much as 50% of the body's serotonin might be made in the gut. And that was about as far as it was. But right now they're saying, and known about it at least 10 years, is that 90% of the body's serotonin is produced in the gut. But, and this is interesting because they didn't used to say this, but now they do, and I think they have for a long time now. In this timeline, gut-derived peripheral serotonin does not cross the blood-brain border. So, like, what is it doing? Rather, it is associated with digestive activity, including in nutrient absorption and transport. So what? It's involved with that. Gut-derived serotonin is also involved with inflammatory response and glucose and lipid homeostasis. So some of the stories now are saying, well, maybe the reason that some of these serotonin drugs that Big Pharma gives you is that it helps with other things in your body and not so much your actual brain. And then when your rest of your body is healthier, like with better glucose and lipid homeostasis, then your brain feels better. Among other effects, a deficit of 5-HT in the gut is also associated with irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. Although peripheral serotonin produced by the gut cannot directly enter the brain, it can influence blood-brain barrier permeability. So in that way, it'll influence brain, maybe how much nutrients can get in. Furthermore, vagus nerve stimulation by the gut microbiota can alter concentration of serotonin, GABA, and glutamate within the brain, all known to influence mood. So this is a whole weird thing because now they're like, okay, what happens in your gut? And then it triggers the vagus nerve, and then the vagus nerve, and blah. So like there's this whole thing now, basically, like your gut has huge amounts of control over your brain. So one of the reasons I just want to put this in here is because I think this is just like a real change in how it used to even work, but also the narrative. So this is a big one on like really working on keeping your gut health up, because I mean, according to the current narrative, it's like crucial. It's absolutely crucial. What? There was never a vote to make English the official language of the USA over German. The myth of the narrow vote stems from what? I don't even know. English is not. Wait, do we not? Huh? Do we not have an official? I thought we did. I can't say I knew this for sure though. Well, you know, the story was that the eagle wasn't an official animal. Oh, as of March 1, 2025, when Trump did. Oh, I'm really suspicious about that. So that comes on top of the eagle having not been our official animal until recently. So what was it? Nothing? There was no language. God, I'm pretty sure. Oh, no, I can't be 100%. Declaring the official language grants legal status and makes it the standard for government business. I think it was already the standard for government business somehow. Since there have been numerous failed attempts for English to rise to the designated language, some viewers view this order as an attack on immigrants, blah, blah, blah. Failed attempts. 2018, English isn't the official. Well, I mean, like, it doesn't, just because it's the official language doesn't mean you can't speak other languages. It just means that that is the language that all the stuff's going to get written in that's official. And obviously, they can't write it in every language, so I don't know, all the drama, whatever. It matters not, basically. I don't think they're going to change what language they're writing stuff in. Huh. Vote on print federal laws in both English and German, not to replace English with German. Now the story, the vote for the German language in the States is a myth. I've never heard of the vote for the German language in the States until just this second, so I have nothing to say. So it didn't until, like, just recently when Trump declared it, apparently. I do think I remember some vague thing about him yapping about the English language. Yeah, I thought that English was it. Everything is printed in English. You're expected to know English. Some areas do print things in some other languages if it's really popular in the area. Like, I think areas of California will print, like, say, your driving test in Spanish, right? You still have to know the English words that are on the sign, but they write all the sentences in, like, say, Spanish. So you could take it in Spanish. As long as you know what, yield and all those other words mean in English. But that was more like just out of, to help people out, sort of, but it wasn't, like, required. And some places don't do that. So, and they always have it in English because English is the official one. I'm really suspicious about that whole thing. I mean, I guess it doesn't really, if you always write everything in your own language, then that's all that really matters. Whether they officially designate it or not, it's all written in our freaking language. And we certainly can't write it in, like, every other language just because we don't have an official language. It's like, oh, I want mine in Swahili. Well, I want mine in ancient Dogon. Like, you're just going to have to learn. You're going to have to pick what you can get. All right. Anyway, I just thought this was really interesting that it's going backwards in time where pretty much your gut makes everything now. All right. Maybe I'll just do this one really quick. I never watched this show, but apparently there's a Mandela in it. And this is extra interesting because this is not a Mandela subreddit, but in this, I don't know what movie this is. It's some kind of comedy movie, but people remember him saying, "Take my strong hand." And here it even shows it in this little clip, but he never actually said that. He never said, "Take my strong hand." And so everybody's like, no, I remember him saying, "Take my strong hand." So it's now, my other hand isn't strong enough. Take my little hand. Now this person knows Mandela. It's like, Luke, I'm your father all over again. And we're going to need a bigger boat. I should upvote those people. Then this, okay, so I don't know. It looks like it reeks of Mandela is the point. Even people who don't know about the Mandela are confused by that one. Did I do that one last week? The strong hand one? I think we did the guy's creepy claw, but I don't... Did I talk about the strong hand thing? I think I saw that later. So this time I'm not talking about the creepy claw, but I did see that in the... I talked about the strong hand thing last week? I thought I just talked about the creepy claw. That was the main one. Like, I talked about that guy, yes. But did I talk about this, which is a comment in there? Did I talk about the strong hand thing? Did I really? Oh my god, I totally don't remember doing it. That's weird. Nah. All right, well, there you got it twice. That's weird because I thought that I just found that, really. All right, all right. All right, anyway, it's too, yeah, it's just like a film line that changed. The trouble is that I don't remember the film. I didn't watch it. But a whole bunch of people are like, "Oh, this is not, I thought it was this, but it's that." But it seemed like a pretty strong one, if you'll if you'll pardon the pun. Okay, well, you'll never forget that Mandela, I guess, since I covered it twice. I apologize. Well, that's kind of a weak ending to the show. Haven't you seen this? No, I'm not into that whole horror flick genre at all. It's just not my deal. When you watch the film watch you making Russian jokes now. Nope, that is like one of my least favorite genres. I'm just not into it. All right, well, hopefully that's a nice, strong, not too weak ending. Sorry about that. It's the deja vu ending for today. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Think good thoughts, everybody. This is Eva signing off for Once Upon a Timeline.